Like the argument from authority, the bandwagon fallacy exploits the fact that we are social, hierarchical. Oh, there goes my computer battery. Hierarchical primates. Most people I know think astrology is scientific, so there must be something to it. While it may not be true that the majority is always wrong, it certainly is not always right. The history books are filled with manias, bubbles, witch hunts, and other extraordinary popular delusions and madnesses of crowds. Another contamination of the intellectual by the social is the attempt to rebut an idea by insulting the character, motives, talents, values, or politics of the person who holds it. The fallacy is called arguing ad hominem against the other person. A crude but common version is endorsed by Wally and Dilbert. I can't tell the difference between good ideas and bad ones. There are smart people on both sides of every idea. What rational process do you use to determine who is right? I label people who disagree with me idiots and call it a day. Often, the expression is more genteel, but no less fallacious. We don't have to take Smith's argument seriously. He's a straight white male and teaches at a business school. The only reason Jones argues that climate change is happening is that it gets her grants and fellowships and invitations to give TED Talks. A related tactic is the genetic fallacy, which has nothing to do with DNA but is related to the word genesis and generate. It refers to evaluating an idea not by its truth but by its origins. Brown got his data from the CIA World Fact Book, and the CIA overthrew democratic governments in Guatemala and Iran. Johnson cited a study funded by a foundation that used to support eugenics. Sometimes the ad hominem and genetic fallacies are combined to forge chains of guilt by association. Williams's theory must be repudiated because he spoke at a conference organized by someone who published a volume containing a chapter written by someone who said something racist. Though no one can gainsay the pleasure of ganging up on an evildoer, the ad hominem and genetic fallacies are genuinely fallacious. Good people can hold bad beliefs and vice versa. To take a pointed example, life-saving knowledge in public health, including the carcinogenicity of tobacco smoke, was originally discovered by Nazi scientists, and tobacco companies were all too happy to reject the smoking cancer link because it was Nazi science. Then, there are arguments directly aimed at the limbic system rather than the cerebral cortex. These include the appeal to emotion. How can anyone look at this photo of the grieving parents of a dead child and say that war deaths have declined? And the increasingly popular affective fallacy, in which a statement may be rejected if it is hurtful or harmful or may cause discomfort. Here we see a perpetrator of the affective fallacy as a child. It may be wrong, but it's how I feel. Many facts, of course, are hurtful. The racial history of the United States, global warming, a cancer diagnosis, Donald Trump. Yet they are facts for all that, and we must know them, the better to deal with them. The ad hominem, genetic, and affective fallacies used to be treated as forehead-slapping blunders or dirty, rotten tricks. Yes, bro, tell us that's wrong. Let's go. The ad hominem, genetic, and affective fallacies used to be treated as forehead-slapping blunders or dirty, rotten tricks. Critical thinking teachers and high school debate coaches would teach their students how to spot and refute them. Yet, in one of the ironies of modern intellectual life, they are becoming the coin of the realm. In large swaths of academia and journalism, the fallacies are applied with gusto, with ideas attacked or suppressed because their proponents, sometimes from centuries past, bear unpleasant odors and stains. It reflects a shift in one's conception of the nature of beliefs, from ideas that may be true or false, to expressions of a person's moral and cultural identity. It also bespeaks a change in how scholars and critics conceive of their mission, from seeking knowledge to advancing social justice and other moral and political causes. Okay. Alright, well, that's cool to know that there used to be a cultural aversiveness to those fallacies. And now we're all in. Shh. Okay. Also, they don't have to be forehead slapping blunders or dirty rotten tricks. They can be default, the natural defaults of the system. And yes, they don't match reality or truth, and so, but we don't have to slap our foreheads or be embarrassed. We are the product of evolution, and they're not dirty, rotten tricks unless, you know, you know, unless you, but Occam's razor, bro. Why can't you just understand that brains are wired not rationally, and so a lot of things that naturally come out are fallacious. And yes, I do want there to be a certain cultural shift, like, ugh, we shouldn't be able to go all in with a fallacious statement, but it shouldn't be like, oh, that fucking loser, he just committed a fallacy. No shit, you did too this morning, surely. But it should be like, oh, he keeps insisting, and we're like telling him that's a fallacy, and he doesn't seem to care. Now that's gross. To be sure, sometimes the context of a statement really is relevant to evaluating its truth. This can leave the misimpression that informal fallacies are okay after all. One can be skeptical of a study showing the efficacy of a drug carried out by someone who stands to profit from the drug. But noting a conflict of interest is not an ad hominem fallacy. One can dismiss a claim that was based on divine inspiration or exegesis of ancient texts or interpreting goat entrails. This debunking is not the genetic fallacy. One can take note of a near consensus among scientists to counter the assertion that we must be agnostic about some issue because the experts disagree. This is not the bandwagon fallacy. Because we're not saying that it's like 100% because of this thing that blank is true or not true, right? It's because it's just a piece of our evidence we're inducing. And we can impose higher standards of evidence for a hypothesis that would call for drastic measures if it were true. This is not the affective fallacy. Right? You better that's gonna be pretty major if that thing is true. So I need a little bit more evidence from you for that. If you wanna charge the mayor with this murder, I'm gonna need some more evidence. That's not necessarily the affective fallacy, because you're not just saying, "Yo, I reject that the mayor committed this murder because that would upset people." Is that what's going on? The difference is that in the legitimate arguments, one can give reasons for why the context of a statement should affect our credence and whether it is true or how we should act on it, such as indicating the degree to which the evidence is trustworthy. With the fallacies, one is surrendering to feelings that have no bearing on the truth of the claim. Hold up. You said earlier, I thought there was one of them that I was like, okay, so it's an informal fallacy, but it's not useless. Okay, well, I can't find one, so carrying on. So, with all these formal and informal fallacies waiting to entrap us, Wikipedia lists more than 100. Why can't we do away with this jibber jabber once and for all and implement Leibniz's plan for logical discourse? Because we're its. Why can't we make our reasonings as tangible as those of a mathematician so that we can find our errors at a glance? Why in the 21st century do we still have Baroom arguments, Twitter wars, couples counseling, presidential debates? Why don't we say, let us calculate and see who's right? We are not living in Leibniz's utopia, and, as with other utopias, we never will. There are at least 3 reasons. So the sections are logical versus empirical truths. First sentence says, one reason logic will never rule the world is the fundamental distinction between logical propositions and empirical ones, which Hume called relations of ideas and matters of fact, and philosophers called analytic and synthetic. Okay, you don't know what that means. Second section is formal versus ecological rationality. First sentence is, a second reason Leibniz's dream will never come true lies in the nature of formal logic. It is formal, blinkered from seeing anything but the symbols and their arrangements as they are laid out in front of the reasoner. And then the third section, which will be on page 98, classical versus family resemblance categories. A third reason that rationality will never be reduced to logic is that the concepts that people care about differ in a crucial way from the predicates of classical logic. And this would change everything if we're not ever going to be able to do like a let us calculate or some version of that where there's some objectivity to it, and that makes me sad. Let's stop there.